survival strategies in the challenging times. As you may know, TIE is a non-profit organization with 61 plus chapters across the globe, with the main objective of fostering entrepreneurship through networking, mentoring, nurturing, and knowledge sharing. Likewise, Gujarat Student Startup and Innovation Hub, which is called as I Hub, is established under the aegis of SSIP by the Education Department, Government of Gujarat. It is a not-for-profit company that aims at creating a strong startup ecosystem and helps innovative ideas transform into successful business ventures. Challenging times are particularly hard on entrepreneurs, and it is safe to say that this current crisis is like none other faced by small business owners in the recent past, and is certainly unnerving trying to tackle all of these unique issues at one time. So today in the discussion, we will focus on smart strategies that may help entrepreneurs not only survive the current situation, but they may emerge stronger with better ability to thrive whatever lies ahead, and most importantly, manage their customers well. I'm pleased to welcome our very well-achieved guest speakers for today. Vishal Shah, he is the founder and CEO of Sinnersoft Technologies Private Limited, one of the few Indian companies which is solely focused on SMEs of India. Our next speaker is Indrajit Mitra, co-founder, Gateway Group of Companies, a global enterprise catering to international customers in more than 15 countries. So what we will do is, we will spend the first 25 to 30 minutes in sort of listening to our speakers, and then we can start with the questions from all of us. However, I'll request you all to provide your questions on the chat and on the Facebook Live from the beginning, as and when you have one. So with these words, starting with you, Vishal, what is your take on the Indian market? Over to you, Vishal.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I thank TIE Ahmedabad and iHub for having me here. I was going through the participant attendees profiles, and I realized that they represent the companies from diverse verticals, are at different life cycle stages of their business, and they are applying a variety of business models. I could see the names of the companies, and I found out that it is so heterogeneous group actually. So given that there cannot be a generic strategy to survive, same strategy to survive for everyone, because the difficulty of survival, necessity of survival, and duration of the survival would be different for every enterprise. So I would like to spend my time on this webinar on suggesting an approach which can be adapted to every context of the business, depending on the vertical they are representing, life cycle stage they are into, and business model, given the duration of the survival required. So let's take a kind of different example. Our situation is like a order batsman who is on the wicket very early in the inning. Thanks to maybe fierce bowling attack by a couple of bowlers, the situation may be more difficult due to strong wind, grass on the pitch, sheen of the new ball. So at this time, this guy who is on the wicket has only one objective and only his survival instincts which are active. And probably he's going to apply all his defenses, he's going to conserve all his energy, he's going to try to survive on the wicket against those bowlers, in the hope that sometime, weaker bowlers spell would start, swings would fizzle out, ball will lose its sheen, and he will strike when there is an opportunity. So for him, it is like he has to hang on the wicket till the time opportunity emerges. So I think we all are facing this kind of situation in our businesses. Before all this happened, we had our own projections, our own strategies, our own ambitions to achieve. And suddenly something happened and we were all, at a halt. So I have spent some time and went through our own experience, our own decisions we have taken, and I've derived a kind of three-step process to derive the survival strategy and action points. So I would like to share a small slide, over here, and then we will take it forward. I would take a minute to share the slide. I hope everyone is able to see the screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a three-step strategy derivation tool. We'll see the first step of it. Yeah, so in this kind of situation, it is very natural to feel frustrated. It is very natural to feel stressed. It is very natural to feel nervous, in this kind of situation, we think that we are not able to do anything. We are maybe behind time. We are losing on a lot of commitments. We are losing on a lot of our milestones. We are losing acceleration. So this is very natural, but in such times I have observed that sometimes we tend to avoid getting into the details. And uh, believe me, this is the first step, which is probably getting into the details, and we have to look at our data points very well. And in my opinion, if we want to derive our own survival strategy, we have to be very well informed about these data points. And according to me, these data points are very precisely defined here. It is about debtors and creditors. uh, Sit calmly and write down everything about your debtors, creditors, amounts, what business they are into, and just try to imagine what is going to happen to them given this kind of situation when they are going to revive. Look at what money they owe to you, or what business you are expecting from them, or what money you owe to them. You also list down the assets you have in terms of cash, mortgage worthy assets, your borrowing capacity. You also be very mathematically correct on your contribution margins, break even points. You categorize each and every expense on your ledgers, either as avoidable or unavoidable. Once you do this, what I suggest is that look at the deviations. Now, before all this started, we had our own projections, and based on those projections, we had taken certain decisions, we had given certain commitments. And when we had done that, we did not know that this is going to happen, and this happened. When this happened, things have deviated from our projections. So maybe our sales projections or sales forecast has gone wrong. We have got budgetary variances. There could be cancellations of order book. There could be supplier commitments done on those projections, and now those projections have gone wrong. So those suppliers commitments are a burden to us. Or maybe there are certain capacity decisions we have done, and for that we have done commitments. We have procured capital equipment, or maybe we have secured the funds debt. So all these data points are very, very necessary to list down. And the last part is this deviations. Just write down all the deviations which have happened. You have your projections which you had done in your Q4 handy, and then just compare all those projections and just list down what has gone wrong. I will also share what we have done and what went wrong with us, so that it can set a context to this particular slide. So in our case, our majority of the sales, 30%, 30 to 35% of the sales happens in Q4 because of depreciation benefits towards our products, certain government subsidies, And the price revisions we always have on the 1st April 2000, every year. So we always have 35% of the sales or revenue happening from the Q4. And that was our projection based on the trend of last 10 years. And accordingly, we had a deviation of sales. And because of no activity, we could not, achieve that particular revenue. And based on that revenue, whatever commitments, whatever decisions we have taken on our capacity, on our overheads, on our commitment to our component suppliers, completely went haywire. So once you are done with this first step, you should look at the step 2, which is derive the pressure points. Now you know what you had projected, you know what has gone wrong and to what extent it has gone wrong. So you can very well define the pressure points. You can quantify those pressure points. So for example, if you are holding a lot of finished goods which you expected to sell in the last quarter, and or maybe you have a lot of raw material because you expected that in the year start you are going to have some big order. So there could be a pressure point on your working capital, and you can very well quantify what is the quantity of that pressure point. It could be your benched manpower. It could be your outstanding in the market. It could be your procurement commitments. It could be your GST on unpaid sales bill. So you need to work out on your pressure points. Maybe it could be related to working capital. It could be related to your capacity utilization or capacity expansion decisions. It could be related to your overheads, probably which are not justified now, given the different outlook on the growth and business. It could be your own impact on your own debt servicing ability, or it could be because there could be some pressure point because of your own personal overspending you did in good hope, and now your business is unable to support. So this is the another step. In our case, because our projections were 30 to 35% of our total yearly revenue, we had a lot of commitment to our component manufacturers, because we wanted, we had negotiated, we had given them commitment that we will pick up this much of quantity. Based on that, because we knew that always there is, in Q4, there is always a spike in the sales. We always had to provide for installation support and everything accordingly. So we had also commitment in terms of our recruitments, in terms of certain overheads we had already committed. So for us, the pressure point was because of we expected a lot of sales to happen and it did not happen. And because of that, we had a lot of commitment, and that could be our pressure point and that could be our loss. And once we are done with our pressure point, we come to know that now what is very serious for us, what is something we have to really deal with. And once we do that, we should look at how we can neutralize this pressure point or how you can minimize this pressure point. There's a difference between neutralizing and minimizing. Neutralizing means you do something and that pressure point is no longer a pressure point. It is in the range of your own tolerance. When you want to minimize it, you minimize it to the level, or maybe you cannot neutralize or minimize it to an extent and there is something left out. And that is the probably quantified pressure point you have to deal with. So there are various strategies one can apply. Let's say, for example, you have a lot of outstanding in the market when this lockdown happened, and let's say a significant part of your outstanding is large enterprises to whom you are supplying. Most of the SMEs are either exporters or suppliers to large enterprises. So I'm dealing with this. Then there is a government help called MSME Samadhan, which can help you in recovering money from the large enterprises. You can resort to bill discounting. There are very innovative things related to vendor financing. Gone are the days when we rely on old school financial consultants or chartered accountants. Now there are a lot of fintech companies who deal with larger companies for their vendor financing, and you can avail that. You can have goods recall, goods return, sales invoice cancellation. stock clearance, contribution margin, positive sales. You can also look at contribution margin, positive sales, where let's say your expenses are more of a fixed kind and your overheads are high. And let's say you have got a sales opportunity in this kind of market. Don't operate on your profit margins, operate on your contribution margin. It will take care of part of your overheads. You can rephrase your commitments, you can go slow, you can hold expansions, you can cancel the orders, you can bear the penalties, you can switch from capex to opex, you can slash avoidable expenses, you can refinance your assets, you can dispose your assets, you can avail the moratorium, you can increase the credit limits with your bank using your relationships. You can transform short-term liabilities to long-term liabilities. So these are the strategies you can apply, whatever fits with your business model, whatever concerns you. You can actually apply this and you can neutralize or minimize those pressure points. And after that, whatever is left for it, beyond certain point, let's say you have certain working capital requirement or you have certain outstanding, beyond certain point that pressure point is not neutralized, then you can provide for it, and then you can accept that loss and then move on and then focus on the growth of your business when the market reopens. So in our case, we did a clearance sales in last week of March, where we identified few financially strong partners, channel partners, and we sold our product at our contribution margin to them at a discount, and that very well neutralized our pressure point for our commitments towards our component suppliers. And these people, because they have got heavy discounts, they have a longer holding period, and they can also sell it without pressure in next let's say 8 to 10 months. So this is what we did. So actually how it works is, it is like we are roaming in a forest and we know about all the risks and we are worried about it. At the same time, when we are roaming in the same forest with a weapon, in the pocket, and we know what happens, whatever happens, what we have to do. We know that what are the action points. When actually we realize these pressure points, when these pressure points become reality, we have very clear action point. We don't panic, we don't make mistake, and mentally we are prepared to accept them, and that will not bog down our decision-making capabilities. When the opportunity comes, we can actually take that opportunity and don't worry about it and stop worrying about it. So basically, this is what we have done. We have gone through this 3-step strategy, and we have divided our own survival strategy. We have spoken to our customers, we have spoken to our employees, we have rationalized. So on a closing note, I would say that in the times of survival, cash is king. We have to shift ourselves from OPEX to, CAPEX to OPEX. We have to play on our contribution margin flexibility. Then we have to rationalize everything. Whatever we have committed, whatever commitments we have taken, we have to rationalize everything. We have, gone to our employees, we have talked to them. And we have never, we did not hold the appraisals. We carried on all our appraisals in these times. But at the same time, we always, took them on the same side, and we actually rationalized their pay structure in terms of more of a variable and less of the fixed, till uncertainty prevails. So there are a lot of ideas, you can use, and accordingly you can have your own survival strategy. So this is my take on that, Piali. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Vishal. And of course, we will come back to you probably with some questions as well. So with this, let's move on, to the next part of it. And Indrajit, I'm sure it's an equally stressful time for businesses which have global customers. So how does one cope with that? So over to you, Indrajit.
All right. Thanks a lot, Piali and Vishal. Very well spoken and precise and to the point. There's always advantage of hearing somebody speak before you, so that you can already formulate a next speaking line. But pretty much you have covered most of the stuff that I do believe all the participants are also more or less aware. I would like to try and play it down from the international business angle as well, as we had, kind of split it between me and Vishal. I have known Vishal for quite some time, and I'm really amazed at the way he runs a business, and that too domestically, and how much more difficult it is compared to a international business that we run out here. Um, uh, so a little bit of perspective from my angle. I unfortunately have more exposure only in the IT sector. Most of the participants out here, however, have varied experiences, but I'm pretty sure most of you also do businesses with countries abroad. And in today's scenario, unlike any other scenarios in the past, what has happened is almost globally, everyone is equally, affected by this whole situation. Now, one thing which is important for me to bring in context is most of the reason why we are talking today is not just the precursor, is not just COVID-19. We have been observing this kind of a situation scenario even before that. If you ask me, sometime around July of last year is when we started feeling the heat in terms of normalization in the overall business. And fortunately for us, we had started planning for a scenario not so fast, obviously, as Vishal stated, but we were hoping to be the fifth or the sixth, order of player, but suddenly we were propelled up front. So even back then, we were already seeing pressure in Europe, which is our main hub of business in terms of many sectors, primarily automotive sector and all encompassing sectors, then real estate businesses, and so on and so forth. So today's topic is very pertinent, and unfortunately, the COVID-19 situation also happened. But if you ask me in terms of the way we do business, and I was discussing earlier in the morning with Vishal, funnily, all these concepts which we are hearing, as if it's the first time, things like work from home and so on and so forth. In the IT business, it is a pretty common thing. Only that in India, and in context of India, it's something which is a little rare because of the number of people that are involved and also the nature of work that we all do. However, I had been trying to get my senior project managers and delivery heads to try and work out this kind of a collaboration. And they were even skeptical to even work with team members sitting in different floors in the same office. So that was the challenge. Fortunately, this whole COVID-19 situation made them realize that it's just a barrier, and they are now happily working with multiple locations across the city and also the country and the world. So far, so good. March and April have been a huge learning process for all of us, and we have been successfully able to at least get our efficiency and productivity working with minor situations. And as I said, we had been planning for this even way back earlier. So the immediate switch that had to happen in terms of ensuring that people work from home with minimal, risk to the security and so on and so forth was all taken care of, barring a few minor hitches. We were able to have a skeleton staff in our office. I'm right now even talking from office, where we ensured that the network staff ensured that all the, devices and the servers and so on and so forth were up and running. We already had invested heavily in our internal systems, as Vishal pointed out so much, in terms of having accountability of all the tasks that were allocated. We were able to figure out the bench strengths also. We are using this system more extensively today. And as Vishal stated, we have also been very actively gathering all the past analytics and are able to figure out the list of all the customers that are there. And we came out with something my partner termed as a rogue analysis, where we listed out the customers into different categories. So essentially green, orange, and red is how we listed them out. And in green, obviously, these are customers who are going to carry on working with us with no deferment in their invoices and so on and so forth. Then we allocated the people that were, part of that project, ensured that there is maximum uptime in those businesses. Then we picked up the orange category. Orange category are people who are still willing to work with us, but they need better pay or rather payment terms. So we evaluated the length at which we have been working with them, the size of the project, and negotiated with them and are continuing with our piece. Most of these customers asked for a business continuity program at our end, and we were able to provide those kind of documentation also to ensure that there is minimum downtime in that scenario. The final category was the red category. These as in any opportunity or any adversity, there are obviously a certain group of companies which do take advantage of the situation, and they were bad payments. So these were some unfortunate incidents. Usually in a year, you have 2 to 3% of your revenue which fall in that category, but with this kind of a situation, it kind of had a spike in that. So what we did immediately, as Vishal suggested, is did a rationalization of the team that we had. And unfortunately for us, this was the year of reckoning for us, because we had invested heavily into hiring very senior salespeople all across the globe in almost 17 different locations. And we had increased our expense scenario way higher in anticipation of almost a 4x growth. So it was not a very good time for us, and suddenly we had to be encountered with such a situation. So we had to immediately fall back on our mechanism of growth. We did a reality check. We talked with our senior team members. Almost luckily, all of them voluntarily decided to sort of take a pay cut for the duration of period. We also recasted our target so as to be reasonable. What we also did, interestingly, is we realized that this is not a long-term thingy. It will someday spike up again. So what we did was, instead of a 12-month goal target setting practice, we extended the timeline to a 15-month period. So what we will do is, whatever targets we have set up, we are going to kind of extend it to another 3 months, in the hope that some sort of assimilation will happen in that scenario. So that's one of the reprieves for people or the sales people who work on a fixed and a variable, so that it gives them an upside there also. This was also a good time for us to also figure out which of the what part of the resources were not working out for us, and then have a heart-to-heart chat with them. Because as you know, in the tech industry, everything is kind of driven by the spike in salaries. There is some normalization that happens from time to time. It happened in 2008, and this is probably another time it is bound to happen. And only the most skilled resources are the ones which are going to survive. So we also recommend a lot of our engineers to go back to the drawing board. We provide them special time to go with a certification and reskilling and so on and so forth also. We have also been engaging with some agencies who look into outplacement. So we don't believe in the term of letting people go. What we do instead is we hire outplacement agents. These are the people who allow people to be placed in other organizations who are in the need, and we are happy to give the due references to them as well. Yeah. So all in all, the overall business from the tech perspective in the international market, as you can see, US is down in the dumps. But fortunately for us, one of the things which we did early on, you may have heard these terms also, we ensure that not a single business of ours is more than, let's say, 10% of the overall revenue. That's one of the things that we are extremely careful about. Region-wise also, we managed to spread ourselves in terms of US focus is barely 15% of our business. Europe is a high percentage, but within Europe, as you can see, over 10 different locations, our spread is approximately 65% of the overall business. Now, what is the upside there is the fact that even globally, when there is a total lockdown, we have countries like Japan, we have countries like Sweden, who are actually increasing their business requirements. So in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have had actually major closures there, which we had not even anticipated in our forecast. Whereas other regions where we had a huge upside possibility, obviously they got deferred. So it was a good, thought process at that point of time. So it really helped us get into, the next gear. So the third most important piece, as Vishal is also stating, it is very, very important for us to be financially, how do I say, aware of these kind of scenarios. You have to be extremely clinical while running a business. There is a factor where you can run a business by feelings, and there is another factor where you run a business by facts. There has to be a balance there. And we kind of came to a conclusion that as of March, we will set a stop loss situation where these are the reserves that the company has. And from here in ahead, there is a minimum threshold of invoicing and collection that needs to happen on a month-to-month basis. And we know exactly what are the expenses that are there. And as every business worth its salt will realize, that there are fixed costs and there are variable costs. We need to sort of normalize a lot of them. And again, as I said, very early on, we ensure that our real estate costs are taken care of. Everything is owned by us. Fixed cost has essentially hardware, infrastructure, electricity, and so on and so forth. And 80% of our cost is, human resource. So once that was taken care of, we ensure that we will not go below a certain margin in terms of inflow versus outflow. And that's the target that we have set. We will check this for another 6 weeks to 8 weeks worth of time. After that, a second wave of normalization has to happen, unfortunately, because it will probably be for the longer run. So that's all the fiscal prudence that one needs to put into action. We have proper GISs which tell each sales and delivery and the accounts person what is the status, because there is one thing as seeing an Excel sheet. The reality, however, is totally different. I mean, even when you see that there is money in your company, the fact is that money could be lying somewhere in expense account or somewhere in a different country. The reality is that you do not have all the money at your beck and call on a regular basis. So thereby, wherever your major expenses are, you have to have a bank balance which is sufficient to take care of the salaries there, or the major expenses. So we put that into account. One of the other biggest saving grace for us, and which companies which are doing businesses outside should probably leverage on, is the currency fluctuation. Vishal suggested that I should bring a point to that, although I'm not a financial expert, but I'll tell you that that particular, how do we call it, forward booking has allowed us almost 22 to 23% of our bottom line in terms of managing our currencies in the US, Japan, Europe, and so on and so forth. So that has a huge upside in our sustainability also, which means real translation allows me to keep a bench of more than 10 to 20%, which usually is what we work with. So as I said, the need of the hour for any businesses is not to scare off the people, but a reality check has to be there from both the sides. Practicality has to be ensured. We are giving all the support that is required, but at some point of time, we all need to realize that there is a lot of fear psychosis also playing around. This thing is not going to go away anytime soon. So we all have to ensure that we do our bit. At some point of time, we have to take the step, probably move out of our comfort zone, ensure that the accountability is there. There are also a few points which I would like to add there. The work from home concept is here to stay, but it is not going to be an elixir for all. I mean, it's not going to be overnight that suddenly tomorrow all I need is my own working space and the rest of the team can start working from home. I do not see it increasing, or it will stabilize at probably maximum 5 to 25% of the workforce which may start working from home. Beyond that, I still see the rationale that most of the people will need to be coming back to office. The organizations will need to be obviously more aware of the hygiene factor, of how to maintain concepts like social distancing. We have put all that practice. We have been actually burning the midnight oil for the last 10 days, trying to figure out, how to call people, what is the maximum occupancy that we will allow, and so on and so forth. So that readiness has been taken care of now from our business perspective. There are several other points which I could have mentioned. I have been reading a lot of reports in terms of doomsday scenarios. One final point which I would like to keep up is which are the businesses that are going to, look good. From our perspective, we can clearly see that, oil and gas, travel, hospitality, these are in for a severe beating. The tech industry will still hold its way, supporting several other businesses. Many other brick and mortar businesses will need to rely on tech industry to ensure that they are relevant and they are efficient and they are able to sustain their bottom line. I also, sorry, yeah, is there somebody? So I also see a lot of people who belong to different industries, and it might be a very, very good time for them to also look out, and look for businesses. As you can see, there is a little bit of an anti-China wave which is coming up. Countries like South Korea, even the US are looking to on board with different countries, and obviously India is in the forefront in that scenario. A lot of policies will be relaxed by the government, especially it has already done so in the pharma industry as well. But the basic core is if we are to succeed, it's not going to be an easy game. As individuals, as Indians per se, there is a huge amount of gap in which, by that I mean our own self-discipline, accountability, the ability to not just work hard, but to also work smart. These are the key ingredients for us to be able to survive. So whatever weaknesses which we have seen in terms of other countries, we will have to overcome those, ensure that the companies which are trying to give work to us see the and they have no apprehensions in getting some manufacturing units built to us, and so on and so forth. So I think I could probably go on for another half an hour or so, but overall, I think I have different stories of different businesses which have worked or are working towards this new situation. I have also, touched upon a scenario where which kind of organizations, how they are structured will succeed. I believe the organizations which are hierarchical and they have a centralized leadership and they are extremely tightly coupled and their workforce is very concentrated and they have stars like specialists and so on and so forth, and everything is policy and procedure driven, they will have a huge problem in innovation and flexibility. I do believe that a networked organization with a distributed leadership, which is slightly loosely coupled interdependence, lesser interdependence, a more dispersed work stop, which is more in line with the term gig economy, as we all, the millennials call it. Also have cross-trained generalists guided by simple yet flexible rules. I think that's the kind of organization which is going to be in the next swing. A lot of startups will have struggles. However, they need to work in a bootstrap mode. There was a reality check that was anyways required at some point of time, which is happening now. So I think with that, I will probably end my piece of conversation. And, I believe I have covered quite a bit of things. So over to you, Piali, and maybe any questions that comes on.
Sure. So no, thank you, Indrajit. I think very insightful, and of course I request people, everybody who's attending, if you have any questions, please sort of you can send it to us on the chat or on the FB Live as well. If you have any questions, Dhara, you can bring it here. Two questions that we had, one from Milan Patel and one from Ravi Patel. I think probably you've already responded to it. So Milan wanted to know if this work from home, this new culture will, probably will continue to remain even post-COVID. So
Yeah.
Indra, you had your view, anything differently you think, Vishal, on that?
Mute.
You are on mute,
Vishal,
Vishal.
you are on mute.
Yeah, I lost you clearly. Can you please repeat?
Vishal, we cannot, you're not audible.
Hello? Yeah.
I think his video is stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Uh, hello?
Yeah. So I think
I
as
have internet
yeah.
20
So
seconds.
so Piali, I think I have answered that piece,
Maybe
to
we
some
can move
extent.
to the next question till probably,
Sure.
we have
Yeah.
Vishal, the audio
Yeah.
and video back. We can look into the next question, which is from Dr. Paresh Karya.
Mhm.
His question is, I guess, if this downturn is prolonged, how should we think about various more cost and other actions in the future?
Yeah, I think it depends on the businesses. As I was talking more from the IT perspective, if you heard me carefully, what I stated was, Dr. Karia, that initial piece was look at the non-performers. That was the first thing that we took into account. Second piece was we obviously had grant schemes, and in anticipation of future growth, we also worked on putting up some costs in terms of the growth scenario. We immediately retracted that. This thing, if it increase or goes further higher, obviously we need to have a relook at our fixed cost scenario as well.
Can you please? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, fixed cost scenario as well. So basically, the other actions, as Vishal also very aptly put, is look back into the various financial methodologies that are possible. Bill discounting is one, asset amelioration is another, becoming more asset light is a scenario. Ensure that probably you can diversify if you have certain hardware for something. Like I have a very interesting story where you may have seen it in the newspapers also. There is a company called Techspin, which is based out of Rajkot, and it is into ball bearings and so on and so forth. And in today's scenario, the entire automotive industry is down in the dumps, and it is going for the longer run. So what it did was it started innovating into building that cubicle for sanitization. So it has started coming out with newer products. So probably using the same raw material. Yeah, I have a couple of neighbors who are in the pharma industry, and I think out of four, two of them have started building sanitizers and so on and so forth also. So we see a lot of innovation where
I request
existing
everyone to
raw
please go on
materials
mute.
can be utilized there. That answer some of the pieces that you're stating?
Yeah, thank you, Indrajit. I got
Thank you.
it. I think you're right.
Thank you, Dr. Karya. The next question is from Amish Panchal. Which are the products for exports we should focus on?
That's a more long-term question. We would really, as I said, the sectors which are not going to do so good, barring that, the rest of it definitely is in the foray. You have to ensure that you have the raw materials and are not dependent on any other country for those scenarios. So obviously, API drugs from pharma companies have a huge demand, and most of the chemicals, fortunately, are available in the Indian market itself. I would say plastics is another, unless we have huge dependency on China. There are many other products, but again, I am not an expert. We have to look at experts who can provide us more, but it should be more of a push-driven mechanism where which companies are keen to come here and set up, a unit out here is where we need to align ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Indrajit. The next question is from Vasundhara. Can you elaborate on engineering manufacturing sector? In that case, which product mix has an opportunity?
Unfortunately, again, this is not my sector area. I would have to do some research if I would have to really tell things with a more accuracy. Yeah.
Any thoughts from you, Vishal?
Yeah, I have interacted with a couple of engineering companies. Of course, this is COVID. I'm just turned off my video because I think that is the reason why my bandwidth is not happy with. What I have interacted. See, we have many customers into auto component manufacturing. They are the suppliers to Mercedes, Volvo, and all kinds of different, giants of the world. See, every industry has a life cycle, and now everybody is visualizing that, combustion engines and electric engines and electrically powered cars and all that. So this is a kind of lifelong phenomenon in the business. If you continue to do the same thing until your market demands it, it is good. But if you still want to continue to do the same thing, even if your market has shifted to something else, at that time probably you have to rethink. It is like you know your destination, and there are different ways to and paths to reach their destination. So probably engineering and auto component, they have a multi-purpose facility. So instead of targeting on vertical based customers, they can target on job based customers, and they can utilize their facilities. I was interacting with one engineering company in Nashik, a huge setup. They are majorly making the parts of combustion engine. Now they themselves started developing their own skill sets, developing their own technologies, and modifying their own manufacturing facilities to multi-purpose ones. And now probably last time when I was in Nashik, 2 months back, they had some quality check by some electrical car manufacturer, and they were actually shifting their base from vertical base to facility base. So it's like, I have these engineering facilities and I can make whatever you want. You just share your design with me. So this is something probably might help to answer this question.
Thank you, Vishal. Quickly, I'll go to the next one, which is from Jitin Thakur. Indrajit, to you. Any opportunity in IT for new business lines in B class cities? Indrajit, you are on mute.
I think there is obviously a lot of IT opportunities in my mind in terms of whether it is B cities or class A cities also. Most of it will be homegrown, utilities or applications which we are building. I don't know if any one of you is observing, very, very quickly, Reliance has started spreading its tentacles and has already started giving, location-wide networking services. So this whole concept of connectivity is going to go to the next level altogether. We are already talking about 5G, which is going to be 10x faster than 4x. And everything is coming together in a place where I do see that at any given point of time, opportunities in terms of where people are able to work remotely, a lot of things are automated, which has been happening any which ways over the last 1 or 2 years. It has already, this thing has only sped that up. The fact that we don't need to go to physical schools anymore to learn new stuff, the fact that we don't ever need to go out of our mobiles to make any payments or so many other things, the fact that we can transact online on most of the majority of the cases. Even for that matter, we've stopped going to theaters and also stopped watching TV for that matter, where we have live streaming available, right? So there's a height of this consolidation, and I do see a lot of improvement possibilities in all these scenarios in terms of security, in terms of the ability to hyperconnect all these channels of distribution, where you're moving from one device to the other almost seamlessly, or you're moving from one place of your house to the others without any latency, without any downtime. So there is a lot of backend infrastructure related, app related, user experience related work which is going to happen. And I do not think there is any line between A cities or B cities anymore, because these kind of skills, anybody with normal intelligence, with the ability to get online, avail of the knowledge based material, ability to work hard, is going to be able to come out with innovation.
So, thank you, Indrajit. One quick question from Rushi on the startup industry. How do you see probably the crowdfunding or the seed funding scenario changing with this sort of post?
So there will be a knee-jerk reaction. I think for now it will dry up for a bit. I am personally an investor, and I can see from my experience that I am putting all these scenarios into the back burner for now. One of the key reasons is not that there is a fear. The fact is also that the hype creation has lessened quite a bit. even before COVID. You have seen the stories of, Uber and WeWork and so on and so forth, even before COVID. We will need to be more accountable. There needs to be specific guidelines as to how fundraising can happen and how accountable can anybody who has an idea or has run a or is starting up a company is able to do. This is not the case in the West, where it is much more regularized and documented, and there is a lot of control there. Out here, the scenario is not so. So I do see that there needs to be a lot of formalization that needs to happen to this industry. For now, seed funding may be slightly difficult as per me, but we don't know, because the valuation game is not going to be playing out the same way as it did earlier.
Thank you. There's another question, which is actually more probably a little relatively general question. What is the opportunity to transfer business from China to India? Maybe Aravindo probably is looking for your thoughts around that. Vishal, Indrajit, either of you.
Well,
Yeah,
I believe that there's a huge opportunity, and I think government is also noticing that opportunity. And to my mind, we are going to see a paradigm shift in a lot of our labor laws and our ease of doing business in next 24 months. So I think it is an opportunity. It is a huge opportunity.
Right. So,
I agree.
So there is one question from Samir Sangvi. I think Indrajit, you had touched upon it briefly earlier. What are the permanent or long-term behavior change you see that will impact our day-to-day running of our business operations now?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously need to get into more detail of it. As I said, there will be a more trust-based relationship that needs to be worked out. I have heard organizations similar to mine which have also implemented draconian laws in terms of monitoring the efficiency and the productivity, thereby taking snapshots of desktops and essentially, trying to log keystrokes and so on and so forth to ensure that the hours happen. There is obviously a reason for that, and then there are organizations which will need to rely on pure face-to-face relationships and so on and so forth. But all in all, there will be a behavioral change there. Second behavioral change, as I see, traveling will become it will not be a norm anymore. It will only become more essential as and when required, because even earlier in the West, one-to-one meetings were not very popular beyond a certain point also. Yeah, so quite a bit of behavioral changes in that sense is what I see. I do see people becoming probably less materialistic, because they have seen what is the actuality or the new normal, but that could be a short-term memory also. At least we get to know that what is luxury and what is essential. I have personally got to know quite a bit looking at the household expenses for the last 1.5 months. It's been a grand realization. Not to go to the petrol pump every fourth day is a good feeling to have. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I see in the overall day-to-day running of businesses.
Vishal, do you add anything to it?
Yeah, I would like to add one thing, very specific to SME perspective. I always believe that SME owners are very bad at delegation. I would meet 10 SME owners and check their delegation skills, and I would find that 8 out of them have no second line of management, and they wait for at least 25 years for their second line of management when their son or daughter joins the business. So I think this particular crisis is going to, make them change actually. Now, I have seen for 2 months, there are so many SME owners whose organizations have gone just paranoid because they do not have a second line of management, and their people are not able to independently decide. So I think this is going to change in the behavior of the entrepreneurs also. They are going to probably develop their own second line. They are going to delegate the decision making to their own team members, and they're going to appreciate the loyal people. So I think this is something, a behavioral change, I'm forcing, and I would be pleased to see that.
Lovely. Thank you, Vishal. I think it's an extremely important point you brought up. So I think we could probably have time for this one last question, which is from Alok Sharma. So he's saying that, do you see any shift coming in the learning and development, especially in the soft skills in India now? For example, how much will the e-learning shadow on the instructor-led workshops?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, but again, as I said, if you ask me personally, 2015 was the year where I had taken up a master's course in business administration from Berkeley. And there, when I visited that location, we had myriad of professors who were giving us certain tasks and activities. And they made a very alarming statement. It was a little bit of a shocker for us for a campus that size. They were stating that the future is where individuals may not even go to a college anymore. They will all be learning from their households. I mean, it's going to be that rampant. So the whole amount of infrastructure that, colleges, universities, and campuses are spending, I see that changing fundamentally. And most of our training in the company that I'm sitting around in, there is a huge amount of focus on ensuring that, let's say you have 2,000 hours in a year for an individual, at least 10% of it, almost a month's worth of effort you have to spend in training yourself. In terms of soft skills, obviously it is very, very relevant because of our business. The nature of our business is we need to be communication wise extremely to the point. We are working with almost 25 to 30 different cultures, different languages. For them also, English is not a primary language. So you must understand that if both sides do not know English as a language, how difficult it would become, So soft skill upgradation, etiquette training, how to behave, these have been around even before COVID-19, I think. This has been a challenge which needs to be circumvented for anyone who is doing international business.
Well, absolutely agree with you, Indrajit. Thank you actually for not just the response to this question, Indrajit and Vishal. I think we had fabulous questions and it kind of really helped us to get your views on all of that. I think we are almost at the end of our time, probably not any more questions. If it was, we could have taken, but I would still request that you do have my email ID. If there are any questions you would like even at a later date for Vishal or Indrajit, happy to have your questions and get you connected to either of them.
Thank you all. And it was a pleasure to be part of this group, and happy to join again at some point of time. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care and stay safe all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Have a good evening.